Seconds out.
22 years later, Team Eubank back on ITV. You've had some incredible nights, obviously, on ITV. 2-3 of the greatest fights in boxing history have been on ITV. How amazing is it for you as a father to now be showcasing your son on the world stage on ITV?
Exciting, because there is the fear of the unknown. You never can tell what's going to happen in a fight. So there's always that edginess. You're always a little bit unsure, but that's kind of like the buzz, the fear. What we have been able to build in Junior as a fighter, and he is built, which is a very difficult thing to do nowadays.
You feel he's finally built? He's the final product you've been working on for so many years?
Yes. He's finally built, yes. This happened in about November, where I realized that this is the built fighter, meaning that there's no one he can't beat on the planet in his weight division or divisions, because his process is so, irrepressible. So long as strategy is stuck to, he has the beating of everybody. And going back to ITV, the fact is, back in 1990, January the 16th, I was born on ITV that particular night, where all my skill and all of my prowess came out this one particular night in a place called Splot in Cardiff. Trevor East was in the audience. He was the director of ITV Sport at the time, and he vowed he would have me on ITV, and I stayed on ITV for 4 years, having 14 World Championship wins. So having gone off to Sky, because they paid me so much money to actually leave and launch their box office, having done that and coming back to ITV, it's just incredible. It's surreal, actually.
It also opens, it's nice that it's not just, I think on ITV being a terrestrial channel, it's not just boxing fans. You're now showcasing to, all sorts of fans, housewives, kids, everyone. And I think boxing's such a great sport, it's nice to kind of give it to everybody.
The key thing is what we're giving. Now, what we're giving is effectively, it's brutality under the auspices of the British Boxing Board of Control, so it's very controlled. My son he's a gentle soul outside of the ring. Outside of the ring and outside of the conversation of boxing, he speaks calm, objective, with good manners. He's considerate. He is thoughtful in his approach, and he's gentle outside of the ring. But inside the ring, he is an absolute. He just has complete magic.
Without sounding derogatory at all, he's an animal. That's how he comes across, and it's quite interesting. I was actually talking about this with someone the other day. Out of all boxers that I've interviewed, now it's interesting you say that outside of the ring he's very calm, he's very gentle, he comes across as emotionless, quite cold, and again I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I think it's almost robotic, which I guess is great attributes to take into a ring, because you don't want to be that gentle, emotional soul in the ring.
Which is why I think the ITV viewers, after all these years, will be given an upgraded version of Dad. Upgraded, new and improved, much more speed.
Upgrade? I was going to say, is it all down to speed? That's what qualifies him as being more upgraded than you?
It's speed, but speed with precision and irrepressibility, meaning that this man, it isn't known in boxing for anyone to throw a 50-punch combination. People throw 3 and 4 punch combinations. No one throws 50-punch combinations. Nobody. It doesn't exist. And this young man is doing it. So what we have here isn't just the DNA that is mine, the intelligence that is mine, being replicated by Junior, the ringcraft and theatre. It's also this process of being, absolutely relentless, brutal in his quest, his mission to realize his dream, which is to be a world champion.
Hopefully in 8 days that dream will be realised. It's for the IBO title. Again, you're always going to have people who've got problems with this and that and want to, down it in some way. The IBO title, are you picking that purely because the moment, if it happens for him, he is world champion, it opens the doors?
Yes.
It gives you more control over who you fight, when you fight, obviously once that belt's around his waist.
Yes. The IBO World Super Middleweight Championship is a passport, effectively. The opponent will be difficult to deal with. In actual fact, he has already been difficult to deal with because it's what Junior did yesterday, last week, last month, last year, and the years before that has prepared him to be able to take the title. If he hadn't done the work, he wouldn't be able to do it on the night. Okay. His attributes will, I believe, make him out to be. I know there was another point I was making, but I want to say that his attributes,
Junior's attributes.
yes, his attributes will effectively allow him to be the new money in boxing, with ITV behind him, because I think he will engage the world in terms of what he can do. It's extraordinary.
You say he doesn't fear anyone. You, as a team, don't fear anyone. His opponent, Quinlan, it's the first defence of his world title. He's obviously confident enough that he's flying the other side of the world to defend his title for the first time. The title he has worked incredibly hard to get, and he is challenging himself to take on an opponent such as your son. So I guess there is respect there, firstly for his confidence, but interestingly, he's completely the underdog despite being world champion.
Yes, well, that's for the public to look at and say, and be intrigued by, whether in the positive or negative. As far as we are concerned, every opponent is dangerous, and so therefore he is trained, he's focused, he is. He's on the verge of making history because of what I did in my history in boxing. It hasn't happened where...
There's an uncanny resemblance with the amount of fights you both had at amateur, then your first world title fight is 25 and he's on his 25th.
That's right. I was saying earlier on, could it be that I've been so calculated?
Could it be? You tell me.
Could it be that this IQ of mine has been so brilliant that he had 26 amateur fights, as did I, and in his 25th fight, it's going to be his first world championship fight, as was mine. It isn't.
And on ITV.
And on ITV. But it isn't one of device. It's one of, as she said, Shirley Bassey, a little bit of history repeating.
Must be quite nostalgic for you, in a way.
Nostalgic?
In a good way.
No, it is nostalgic, but it's surreal. It doesn't really, who does this? This hasn't been done. And, what everyone is saying about this fight, they're concentrating on the fight. The two things I'm concentrating on is the fact that his ability, no matter who he fights, is just, it's magic. You're watching genius in motion. In boxing, no one else has his speed, the process, the focus he has, and on top of that, he's making history. With obviously what I did all those years ago on the same channel, and so this is an event, and if you miss it, I don't understand. How can you miss this? This is not just a fight. Okay, this is, again, a little bit of history repeating.
Talking of, you've mentioned other fights. He has moved up to super middleweight, but I assume once this world title is his, you're looking at all sorts of fights. Obviously, we have some very, very tasty fights back at middleweight. Golovkin, Billy Joe Saunders. I assume those are definitely still on your radar.
Well, they are very important to Junior. They're important to me. My job is to manage and make sure that it's a fair fighting field. Now, let me just tell you what fair means to me. Fair doesn't mean 50-50. Fair means, for me, 80% in your favor and 20% in ours. I accept that as fair. I do not accept as fair 99 in your favor and 1 in ours, because that's the situation we have with Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders is not our issue. Frank Warren is our issue. Okay? He's made things difficult, and he would make things difficult. If Billy Joe Saunders if he really wants that fight, and we want it, but not at the expense Frank Warren is asking us to pay. So
It's a business as well at the end of the day.
I'm not even looking at the business aspect of it. It's not about the money. It's about having okay. I think the fairest way to say it in terms of Saunders is as follows: to have a neutral promoter. Neutral, not mine, not me, not Poxon, and not Queensberry or Frank Warren Promotions. A neutral promoter, and that fight can happen. Otherwise, it's unlikely to, because I don't care what anybody says. My job is to protect my fighter, my son. And if it's not a neutral promoter, then I can't see how it can happen, because it isn't fair. As I said, you can have it 80% in your favor, but not 99%.
Another fight that didn't happen that was very close to happening, and maybe you deemed that as unfair, was obviously Golovkin. And Golovkin, you've always maintained your son could destroy in the ring.
Yes, Rick, I believe we do. But there's a difference between that promoter and Frank Warren. That can be a fair fight. That can be a 50-50 fight. Okay?
With Matchroom, you're talking about?
Matchroom, yeah. But we were swindled out of that fight. We didn't know that there was anyone else in the background. We were told that the show at pay-per-view level belongs to us. When we tried to actually manage the show, we wasn't allowed to, and that's why it was given to Kel. Two weights beneath middleweight, and the public bought it. I mean, I remember them saying to me, you tell the public what you want them to hear, and like children, they will believe you. And that's exactly what they've done. I'm never going to do that. I'm always going to speak truthfully and openly about our position, which will make sense to the public. It doesn't make sense to anyone that a fighter can be a welterweight and fight a middleweight. Doesn't make sense. And we wouldn't do that to the public.
Well, it'd be a real shame for the public, the boxing fans, for fights of these magnitudes not to happen due to just politics, so to speak.
Well, now that's the wonderful thing about the situation in which we sit. Now I have the wherewithal to actually make these fights without politics. We're not interested in putting anybody in any lanes. We are going for unification of titles. And the IBO World Super Middleweight Championship will give us the ability to bypass the politics. And that's what the boxing public should want. That's what they do want. It's only that they've been bamboozled by the language of the current promoters, where they're keeping everything in their lane so that they can profit on the strength of us, the fighters. They did it to me in my career, and the reason why they talk of me in such disparaging ways is because I will not allow them to do to Junior what they did to me. I will not allow them to do to fighters under my control what they did to me. I'm going to protect the fighters, and in fact, we're going to expose their behavior. I see them now even creeping around, trying to be involved in Junior's career, trying to sabotage, trying to block, trying to upset our process. And they should stop, because I'm not actually trying to do anything to them. Live and let live. Otherwise, they are going to live and let die, and we are not going to die. The only thing that actually matters in boxing, please remember, is the fighter. Without the fighter, these guys don't matter. And Junior is the new money. ITV is the biggest, 10 times bigger than Sky. And by that virtue, we intend to attract the best fighters in the world to ITV for the viewing pleasure of the public.
Something I find very interesting and fascinating is your relationship with Junior. And I know we spoke last week about this, and I did say I asked Junior, and you said to me, ask Junior his thoughts on it. But your relationship is father and son, yet you have such a huge influence on his career. And again, you all seem to come into for criticism for that. Some people say, you're taking his limelight, you're taking his moment. But yet you said to me the other day, and I think it was very interesting, you said, why would you step away? And Junior echoed this, why would I have anybody else around me who has not only got my best interest at heart because of my father, no man on the planet could possibly want more and better for their son than their own father. And then on top of that, your boxing expertise and credentials, like who can match the CV and the father status. But what I find interesting is, do you ever can you separate the two hats ever? Can you have that time of just father and son, or is it all just so embroiled because, there's so much at stake, I guess, with the career? Is it hard to have the two separate hats?
There isn't two hats, and that's where I may be at fault, because perhaps I haven't been able to be the father that my children would have liked because of this obsession of boxing and the art, the craft, the code of. So I've been a very tough father, and Junior has been able to navigate my parenting skills. And I say navigate because it must have been tough. He never talked.
You told me you had such a close relationship with your father as well.
But being a fighter and wanting the best for him, I've had to be stringent. I've had to be unforgiving. I've had to be brutal towards him. And the reason I've had to be brutal towards him is because if I wasn't, then he would then have to deal with the brutality of what you refer to as the sport of boxing. Now I'm in a position where I have no fear for what Junior is going to experience, because he is the danger. The best way for me to have protected him is to give him the tools that I have, which is nothing, only pressure. And because he's been able to deal with all of that pressure, he can now deal with all the pressures of what's going to come at him inside that ring. My job is to make sure that outside of it, no one gets to him, no one corrupts him.
No one tries to deter him from that path.
Deter is not the right word.
Okay, give me the right word then.
Deter is the wrong word, because it's not that they're trying to stop him, it's that they're trying to give him information to have them actually come on board themselves, that we can do this for you. I'm giving him the best, meaning that I'm not giving him anything. I'm giving him only pressure. I'm only giving him hardship. I'm only putting him in there when he was coming up against sparring partners who ripped him apart. Did that in Cuba with a fighter who was 91 kilos, tore him to pieces. I know Junior can fight. I know he's got the heart. The most important thing about boxing, if you want to be a good boxer, is can you take punishment? There are so many who can dish it out. Can you take it? Because if you can take it, then no one can stop you, as proved in my career. It's not that I was good. I wasn't even that good in my view.
You were all right. You were relatively average. I'll give you that.
I get what people say. You shouldn't speak so. You shouldn't speak that way about yourself. You were what you were.
I think you're allowed to. We'll give you credit for that.
But what I was clever. I understood how to break down opponents. I knew what I was good at. I looked at the way in which they used their process. I was like, well, I don't believe in me, but I can beat you. I can, you don't move as good as me. Your jab is not as good as mine. I can take a punch. I don't believe in me, but I can beat you. So I can see clearly what Junior is, and there isn't anyone who can match him. Anybody. And that's why I say he's the new money. He's going to clean up and change the game. You think Mayweather changed the game? Watch what Junior does. Watch.
Wow. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. I know this is going to be a really, really exciting start to hopefully a very successful journey. And all the best on February the 4th. Thank you.
That's kind. Thank you.
Thanks.